Hi everyone, I'm Kristen. Welcome and welcome back. Today I'm going to be sharing some holiday book recommendations with you, but rather than limiting myself to books that just feel Christmassy or feel like a winter wonderland, I'm going to instead recommend books for particular scenarios or feelings that you might find yourself in this upcoming holiday season. I did another holiday recommendation video like this a couple years ago, so I will link that one in the cards above. You can check out if you are looking for more recommendations. I am going to stick to the same situations that you might find yourself in or vibes that you might find yourself looking for this holiday season. So if you want more recommendations, you can find them there as well. Not only am I going to give you a recommendation per situation that you find yourself in or looking for, I'm also going to give you another additional, and if you've already read that, try this instead kind of one that I'm not going to talk about as much, but that I feel like still falls within the same category. So let's go ahead and jump into it. The first situation or book reading need that you might find yourself having this holiday season is something that is cozy and feel good. And for that, I'm going to recommend Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. I never get to recommend this book, or I find that I don't generally go out of my way to recommend this book, even though I absolutely love it and it was so cozy and charming when I read it. But the idea with the series is that they are written as if they are Regency romance books, but set in an alternate England where fairies and magic are in fact real. So in our first book, Half a Soul, we are following Theodora, or Dora, who, when she was young, had half of her soul stolen by a fairy. And because of this, she tends not to experience emotions quite as intensely as every other person around her. Because of this, also, she tends not to pick up on social cues in other people's faces. She doesn't understand social norms and societal norms and such as they are, and how important that plays into Regency era England. But this particular season in London, she decides to take matters into her own hands and figure out what makes her different, and she enlists the help of the Lord Sorcier, the court magician, Elias. This book overall was just so feel-good and heartwarming. It was really, really nice to see Dora kind of come into her own and come to terms with who she is as a person and be okay with that. There is a subplot with a kind of mysterious illness that is affecting kids, I think orphan kids, or just kids of a certain lower socioeconomic status. So it does touch on some more serious matters, as well as I would say there is perhaps an element of, I guess, child abuse or neglect in I think stepmother in Cinderella element playing or going on with the way that Dora's aunt treats her and speaks about her in front of her that might be a little bit uncomfortable or difficult for some people to read. So do keep that in mind. But even with those elements, it overall had this really, really cozy, charming, light-hearted, hopeful kind of feel to it, and is such a cute, cozy book. And if perhaps you have already read that or you're looking for another cozy recommendation, you can not only check out my other video, but you could also read, if you haven't already, The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. This book is so cozy and charming. We are following a witch who lives in a world where witches are not supposed to congregate, but she is asked to become the teacher for 3 young girl witches who are living in the same household, and chaos and love and found family ensue. So that is another recommendation you could check out if you've already read Half a Soul, or you're just looking for more cozy feel-good books this holiday season. The next reading need or situation that you might find yourself looking for this holiday season is a book that is more quiet and contemplative. I also generally tend to put things that are a little bit more emotionally heavy within this category as well. Perhaps it is something like a slower moving book that you have a little bit more time, you want to slowly take away at something over the course of the holiday season. And for that, I'm going to recommend to you The Witch's Heart by Genevieve Gornichak. This is a Scandinavian mythological retelling of the story of Angbota. Angbota is a one-line byline kind of a character who was one of Loki's wives, and instead in this book we are actually making Angbota the main character, and we are following her journey, putting the spotlight more on her and not about the chaos that is Loki and all of the stories that he's involved with, as well as becoming the mother to 3 of Loki's children who historically or mythologically, I guess, become the evil bad guys in Ragnarok. This book is written with a little bit of distance as it follows a little bit into that kind of fairy tale retelling kind of a feeling. It is very quiet. It is a little bit like slice of life, or we're like going through the day-to-day a little bit with Angbota as we follow like the course of time period that this follows. And we're definitely like reframing in the same way that we do a lot of Greek mythology, like reframing of who the bad guys are. We do a lot of that reframing here through the eyes of the monster's mother and what all of this situation looks and feels like to her. It is a surprisingly heartbreaking book. It is really, really devastating and sad, and I think that if you are looking for a good cathartic cry this holiday season, this book is going to give you that cathartic cry, let me tell you. This is a book that I wish I remembered to recommend more frequently, because I feel like it had a big moment when it first came out. Everyone was talking about it that first year, maybe like year and a half after it came out when it did, but I feel like I don't hear it brought up or recommended enough, considering how great this book is. So definitely if this is the feel that you just want to like be in the feels this holiday season, this is a book you need to check out. My additional recommendation, if you want something like less cathartic cry but still quiet and contemplative, would be The Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence. This is set in a labyrinthine library. A young girl and an older boy who both seem to be connected to the library in ways that we're not really sure. We're not really sure of the timeline, and we're not really sure how, but we're certain that they will intersect at some point. I think this is a great example of a book that you should know very little going into it, because I feel like it is so quiet and cozy and explores this endless, boundless library and the role that learning plays. I'm not supposed to tell you too much about these second books, but if you haven't read The Book That Wouldn't Burn and you're looking for something more quiet and contemplative, this would also be a great pickup for this holiday season. The second book is already out, and the third and final book in this trilogy, the library trilogy, is coming out next year as well. So a great pickup this holiday season if you haven't read it yet and you're in the mood for something quiet. Another book need you might have this holiday season is when you expect lots of distractions. So if you find yourself in a situation where there's a lot of chaos going on and you cannot focus on something that is intricate or specific or with like crazy, challenging, great, but like you need to focus world building, if that is not the right time because there is so much going on and you keep expecting that your uncle, your aunt, or your distant cousin is going to stop to ask you for the millionth time what you are reading, or whatever it is that people find the need to disrupt readers to ask them in the moment. But if that is the case that you expect this holiday season, then you should pick up The Curse of Chalion by Lois McMaster Bujold. In this book, we're following Kazarel, who was previously a lord of an area or like an estate that was lost as part of a border dispute with a neighboring enemy territory. And for some reasons that we get into in the course of the book, he is not ransomed back to his home country and spends several years being a slave rowing ships for this enemy state. At the beginning of the book, we are finding him. He has since been like released, let go, and he is traveling back through his home country to try to find a spot in somebody's household. And from there, we follow Kazarel's re-entry into the society, where he, for circumstances that kind of get away from him, he finds himself the tutor for the princess to the realm. And we see how he has to guide her in the ways of the world as the politics around her begin to be a little bit more complicated. Why I think that this is a good book for if you are having a lot of distractions is that the world itself and the world building and the politics involved are really not that complicated. They're actually very, very straightforward, and something that you don't have to like give a lot of brain power to follow along with. It's not like crazy and action-packed, so you too won't have that moment where you're like right in the middle of something like crazy intense while a family member is perhaps trying to get your attention. Like nothing so crazy is going on that it would be that tough to like put the book down and come back to it 30, 40, however long later you are able to get back to it. But I think this is overall just like a really underhyped, very easy to consume fantasy book. So if you are looking for something that is easy to read while there is chaos going around you, that you know you'll be able to pick up and put down as needed, you could definitely check out The Curse of Challion this holiday season. The other recommendation that I'm going to make here is The Age of Myth by Michael J. Sullivan, or just Age of Myth. We are following a world where there are humans and Frey, which are like these almost immortal, like they live for like 3,000 years. One of our main characters, Wraith, is involved in the death of a Frey. And this has some pretty serious ramifications for the other humans in this area. And again, this one has really, really easy to consume world building, where again, the action is pretty chill, like the plot kind of goes through it, but it again I think is a really great book to read because it's not so complicated, much more character focused, and would be easy to pick up and put down with lots of chaos going on around you. The holidays can bring up a lot of emotions, a lot of different emotions for a lot of different people, so perhaps you are looking for something more fun and uplifting, and for that I am going to recommend you read A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking. This is the first T. Kingfisher book that I ever picked up, and to date, I think is my favorite. In this book, we are following 14-year-old Mona, and Mona's particular magical skill is baking. She is such a good baker. And this is all great because Mona works for her family's bakery. And Mona unfortunately stumbles upon a murder victim at the beginning of this book. However, events unfold from there that are kind of wild and quirky and fun in the best ways that T. Kingfisher can bring to you, that winds up with Mona perhaps being the sole person who can save the city with her baking magic. This book is one of those interesting books that honestly could be read by someone of any different age, kind of like a Disney Pixar movie. Everybody's going to enjoy it, and you're going to get different things based on where you're at. So you could read this with your 10-year-old, and your 10-year-old is going to love it and enjoy it just as much as you are. You're maybe going to pick up on some subtleties of what's being said here a little bit more so than your 10-year-old is. So one of those undefinable age genre could be middle grade, I guess, but also has depth there in the way that T. Kingfisher does so well. This does have T. Kingfisher's amazing ability to mix fun and humor with slightly more serious elements. I honestly thought this book was so fun. If you think a Disney Pixar movie is that fun, that perfect amount of fun and uplifting with a little bit of then this is a book you should absolutely pick up this holiday season. The additional recommendation that I'm going to give you here is Bride by Ali Hazelwood. So totally different end of the spectrum for fun and uplifting. I just thought that this book was a wild hoot of a good time. In this book, we are following the vampire Misery, who has never felt at home and in place within the vampire culture and world, because she in fact was a political hostage as a child given by the vampires to the humans, who is once again essentially being traded off in exchange for, or held as some sort of political leverage between an upcoming treaty between the werewolves and the vampires. So she is being married off to the alpha werewolf named Lo. Really, overall, I just feel Ali Hazelwood had really, really a fun time writing this book. And I think that comes through if you read this in a very, hey, this is meant to be fun, and not taking this seriously as a potential best romance ever. I'm almost certain that it's on some sort of Goodreads best romance list right now. It probably is. I feel Ali Hazelwood wrote this to have fun. And I think that you should read this with the goggles on of knowing that this is meant to be fun. And I, again, have gone into more detail than I went to for this additional recommendation. So if you're looking for a fun time and you're okay with some werewolf paranormal on-scene nodding explicit content, then you should pick up Bride if you haven't, and just have a good time with it. My last category or situation for a book recommendation that you might need for this holiday season is if you are going to be doing some traveling and you are looking for the perfect book to read during that time period. I am going to recommend to you one of my favorite books from the year that I read it, and a novella? I don't know the cutoff point. A short work of fiction that you should read this season, and that is This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El-Matar and Max Gladstone, written as a co-writing project between a poet and a sci-fi author. We get this exchange of letters between two agents on either side of a futuristic time-traveling war. And what starts off as letters that are taunting in nature as they find that they are sabotaging each other's plans develops into this beautiful correspondence of two people is not completely the right word, so let's say like two beings who slowly begin to get to know each other and value more and more the correspondence and this interchange of ideas and thought and existence that really only the other person can understand. Why I recommend this for if you are traveling is that it is so readable. It is so easy to just pick this book up from start and read it all the way through to the end. The book itself is just over 200 pages and the audio book is 4 hours. It is honestly so beautiful and just like a very, very interesting experience that I think would be just so cool to just sit in one go, whether you're driving across country or driving across state or whatever, or taking a short flight, to just listen to this all the way through from one end to the other. I recommended this book all the time the year when I first read it. I absolutely love it, and I'm like working myself up in the moment as I talk about it to do a reread for myself personally. And then the additional recommendation here is again one that is completely different from the book that I just recommended, and that is And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. This is like the only horror book that I've ever read that kind of convinced me that horror was not for me, but not because it was like disgusting, but more that I guess it's more of like of a thriller perhaps. Just I was so terrified. I find this book so terrifying. I always find it really funny. Murphy Napier always puts this book on like a scary books that are not that scary list, and I found this so terrifying. But this is a closed door murder mystery that is sort of a situation of like one being ticked off after the other, and you have to try to figure out what is happening. So if you're okay with like a little bit of like thrilling horror, fearful suspense in your holiday season, this would be so interesting to just read or listen to. I don't know anything about it. I assume it's a similar length. It's a similar length book at 260 pages. So I think it's probably a similar length audiobook as well to This Is How You Lose the Time War, to just like go all the way through this like mystery. If you have not read And Then There Were None, and this sounds like something up your alley, you haven't read anything like this before, it would be another really great traveling book to just read in one sitting as you're traveling. Okay, so those are all of my holiday recommendations. Let me know in the comments down below if you make a specific holiday recommendation this time of year. Maybe do something more traditionally that you recommend, or a book that you just think everybody should read at this time of year. If you like what I do here, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Have a great day. Bye.